Hello, my name is Andrew Lockard, and this is a presentation of the theme analysis for the Glass Menagerie by Tennessee Williams for Miss Pierce's E&C 1102 class. The primary theme that this story rests on, in my opinion, is that of abandonment. Every man in Amanda's life has abandoned her up in this point, whether it's been Tom or her husband, Mr. Wingfield. And at this point, it's her biggest fear in life. Now, the abandonment theme even goes as far as to be integrated into the climax of the story. And this is when Jim leaves Laura when they're in their room talking, and he says that he has a fiancée and he's engaged. This is pretty much the climax of where everything happens, and this includes abandonment. Now, how it's relevant today. According to the U.S. Census, 32% of all households are single parents. 83% of those are single mothers, and this is compared to the 11.9 single parent household rate in 1970. So we've grown 20% more single parent households in just over 40 years. Now, abandonment has a direct correlation to crime rates, and this is in the sense that nearly every single abandonment story or victim has a relation to crime. It's almost inevitable, and there's many issues for that. And that's mainly from mental and physical conditions. Now, mentally, it's a lot earlier in life. The kids experience anxiety, insecurity, depression, self-esteem issues, isolation, and the list goes on and on. But on the other hand, the physical aspect of abandonment comes later on in life, when they haven't learned to deal with it. And some symptoms include drug and alcohol abuse, major fatigue, anger issues, and sometimes even a lack of creativity. This is a quote from Amanda in the Glass Menagerie. "We have to do all that we can to build ourselves up. In these trying times we live in, all that we have to cling to is one of each other." Now, this is very sad in the sense that Tom eventually abandons his family, and it makes this quote even more tragic to figure out that they didn't stick together as much as Amanda wanted them to. Now, the Wingfield family, they only have each other in these tough times. Their father abandoned them, so they rely on each other much like a military unit or a sports team. They need to stick together. The next theme I want to talk about is accepting reality. It's weird that every single Wingfield member has some issue with accepting reality. They each kind of go into their own private world where they don't have to worry about anything. Laura uses physical objects to escape reality. Tom drinks very heavily. And Amanda likes to live in her past self. Now, this is a very unusual one, and it's not very obvious, such as Tom's drinking. So an example would be when Jim came over and she dressed a little bit fancier than normal. She's still pretending like she's her old self and that she's still in her youth. Now, one of the unspoken of things is that Tom eventually accepts his reality, and this is due to him reflecting back on the decision he made to abandon. He's the only Wingfield member to really accept the fact that he made a decision and that he abandoned his family. He may not be happy with it, but it's the reality, and he learned to accept it. And Amanda refuses to accept the reality of her awkward daughter. It's the opposite of Tom, where she's not really realizing that her daughter isn't the perfect girl that she believes she is. Now, how does accepting reality incorporate into today's world? Well, most people do not accept the impact that their decisions have on the world, and they believe that their decisions aren't as important as they think, which results in many juvenile activities and things that they'll regret later on in life. Now, also in the same, these go hand in hand, they attempt to divert the blame towards others for their mistake. This is a lot more common in younger ages, mainly because as people get older, they gain more wisdom, and the gap between those two is huge. They learn to accept things for what they are and, for the most part, divert the blame towards themselves so that they can grow as a person. And what this does, this is probably one of the most major issues today that we face all across the board, is that idolization leads to self-confidence issues, mainly in our 0 to 30-year-old age. Now, it leads to major problems in confidence, and it opens the door to many forms of emotional and physical self-harm. And it's honestly very sad, but the primary result from what I found is that social media and the influence of technology have completely changed the way we feel and the way we talk to each other. Now, we are relatively new to global technology, with it only being developed around 20 to 30 years ago, and it's kind of strange how in that short amount of time we've learned to idolize and to not focus on ourselves and our strengths, but looking towards others. And this is mainly due to the fact that we're being fed information that has no positive impact on us as individuals. Now, this is from a couple of shows, for example, The Walking Dead and Keeping Up with the Kardashians. These are both shows that have no sense of reality, and of course things that normal people will never experience. And this leads to young people striving for realities that just simply aren't there. And they're at too young of an age, and they don't realize that their age really does have an impact on the world and the way that they feel about things. So this leads to many, many self-confidence issues, not only then, but later on in life when they fail. And so in short, they're setting the bar too high and right off the bat, instead of making small, progressive periods of growth. This is also a quote from Amanda in The Glass Menagerie. "Not one gentleman caller. It can't be. There must be a flood. There must have been a tornado." Now, this is one of the major quotes that defines Amanda and her detachment from reality. She can't even look at her daughter objectively, and she proceeds to believe that she's perfect and that she's literally the perfect girl. Now, one of the other themes, it's not as prevalent and it's not as obvious as the others, but it's drugs and alcohol. It's used mainly as a tool by Tennessee Williams, and this is that it's used to symbolize all unwelcome activities in the story. Now, Tom is a very, very heavy drunk, and there's only about one or two scenes where it's really obvious, but it's very obvious. Now, Amanda believes that all sorts of alcohol is just a terrible activity. Now, there are a couple things that prove this, and one is that Amanda, one of the first questions she asks about the boy Jim that Tom brought home, is that if he's a boy who drinks. Now, this is mainly due to the fact that she associates alcohol with people who don't care about their future or are unambitious. Now, she has very bad past relationships with alcohol. Her husband used to drink, and she associates all sorts of alcohol with the feeling of abandonment. And Tom uses alcohol to escape reality and uses it to cope with the difficult realities in life, whether it be him having to provide for his family or the fact that his father abandoned him. Now, drugs and alcohol today. This is a very big issue that we've kind of watered down over the years, even though some scientific studies still prove that it's not the healthiest thing to do. And the primary reason is that we're using drugs and alcohol to cope with the stress of the current world. The world we live in now is very different from past societies. Now, there's so much more to worry about, and it's so much more fast-paced than anything anyone's ever really experienced before. We're just at a point of global communication, and every single person has hundreds, even thousands decisions to make every day. And because of this, most people really aren't genetically able to handle the stress, and this leads to people making bad decisions and coping with it later on in life with unhealthy activities or substance abuse. Now, it's also becoming more common with our youth, and this is mainly due to the prevalence and just the sheer amount of drugs and alcohol in today's society. Our youth is being introduced to these substances much earlier than ever before, and it's becoming the normal thing to do in social groups. Now, this is a little bit off topic, but more drugs are becoming more legal, and we don't really know the point where everything's going to be legalized. That's something way in the future, and it's something that we should probably talk about it now, because it has to do with today, with the legalization of marijuana and probably more drugs later on. Now, finally, also a quote from Amanda. "I think you've been doing things that you're ashamed of. That's why you act like this." She's saying this to Tom, and she believes that Tom is coping with the stress of providing and losing his father through substance abuse. Now, as a mom, she's just being very worried for her son, just like any mother would. And that is it. These are the three theme analysis: drugs and alcohol, accepting reality, and abandonment. Thank you.